I am going to submit a motion to amend the agenda for today's meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of amending the agenda for today's meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, please record that it was unanimous. Under new business, I'm going to submit a motion to approve a defined pension equivalent contribution plan for the Ocean Pines Police Department. And I will put that as the last item under new business. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the February regular meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approval of the minutes from the February 18th regular meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. Next item is President's remarks. I'm going to read a prepared statement. This statement is to all the members of the Ocean Pines Association. Everyone's aware of the terrible tragedy that occurred last summer regarding 14-year-old Gavin Nutt. No one can imagine the grief and suffering being endured by the parents of their child. As the investigation into this tragedy is ongoing, it's no surprise that frustration is growing as the time passes without official action by the state attorney, the state police conducting the investigation. Beyond the foundation that was created in Gavin's honor and wonderful things that have been accomplished, a Facebook group named Do It for Gavin was formed to, among other things, share information and opinions regarding the issue. We've been told that for the most part, the group discussed things in a reasonable manner, but at some point, the tone changed from sharing information to targeting businesses and conducting protests and boycotts. Quite frankly, while some may disagree, we see no issue with that course of action. However, their actions also included bullying of business staff, bullying of children, and threatening organization and customers and OPA board members. Their actions demonstrated a move away from justice to a support for vengeance. What we have issue with is, given that the targeted business has been sold, the group has now turned its attention to Ocean Pines. Their tactics have been to bully and threaten organizations and entertainment providers from having events at our yacht club. As an example, because of the harassment that was going on in the community by this group, the Ravens Roost organization decided to move their planned fundraising event from the yacht club to another location. The Veterans Memorial fundraising event was disrupted by this group as the planned entertainer backed out from performing. Organizers were told if the event was held at the yacht club, that the memorial itself was going to be vandalized. On another note, the band that was scheduled to perform at the St. Patrick's Day event last week backed out at the last minute due to being harassed by this group. Do these actions convey a desire for justice or vengeance? When will they stop? I can answer that. This is a call to all association members. Raise your voices and be heard. We cannot let this vigilante group run roughshod over our community. By their actions and social media posts, they've demonstrated they care nothing about Ocean Pines and will go to whatever lengths it takes to disrupt our community and our livelihood. We would welcome a conversation with representatives from the Do It for Gavin group with the hope of understanding why they want to disrupt Ocean Pines and how their actions would serve to move forward with justice. Trust that justice regarding this case is what all of us want. Perhaps we could convince them that their anger should be directed towards those who are in charge of the investigation. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, and talk to other association members. Let them know that these situations are taking place, and that this group is promoting a level of disruption to our community that at some point will affect us financially, which in turn will most likely lead to an increase in annual assessments. We must continue to do what it takes to protect our community and the amenities we've paid to enjoy. I ask the members of the association to continue to support our amenities and all the fundraising events that go along with it, as together we can maintain the things that make our community what it is for us. We all want justice for Gavin, and our hope is that the case is resolved as soon as possible. Next item on the agenda. Item on the agenda. GM report, John.
Thank you, Doug. So we start off just in the front page there. Should start off with some pictures. Everything that's going on the left are the new docks at the marina, for the marina dock in for the gas pipeline. So we are working on that, but I'll talk a little more about it, give you the detail. On the right is Fish and Marine, finishing up on the bulkheads in the pintail section. And then, of course, they'll move over and they're working on the implementation of the docks. Turn the page. All right, so those are all the initiatives that I'm going to talk about, or Linda's going to talk about this morning. A lot of them is updates on what we heard in the last board meeting also. So the police department, turn the slide. Police department, just a couple updates. I'm going to go quick through this, but the main items are there is still an ongoing investigation. This is ongoing. That's basically what I have. I know people have been reaching out to several of us asking. It's an ongoing investigation. I have nothing new to report from the last time. Where are we on the police department as far as filling positions? You will see there will be favorability in the payroll, but I will talk about that a little bit later. But we are aggressively looking to fill the positions. We have 5-6 positions at the officer level. The good news is we've received many resumes or applications. We have put in a new process, testing. So what the testing is, and that's coming up, there's a written test, there's working with the physical so that when they go to the academy, they would be more prepared. And what I'm being told is that we have more success, or police departments have more success when we test. So we're putting that in. Apparently we haven't had that in the past. I will talk more about the pension equivalents, as Doug mentioned, later on. Turn the page. Job fair open position. So obviously this has been a big item the last couple of weeks. Try to fill positions. Positions that we've had open at the Public Works, Police, Aquatics, as well as getting ready for the what I call the busy season. So there's all the detail. I'm not going to go through it. Certainly there. If anybody has any questions, of course, email me at info@oceanpines.org. But you can see all the work we're doing and the applications that are coming in. On the page. Dog park. I know this came up last time at the last board meeting. We have done a lot. The pictures tell the story there. Last time, and I forget the gentleman, I'm not sure if he's here. He is here. I think we've addressed everything that you said. Thank you, sir. A lot of it was in the process already, but if you look on the top right, he was right. You know, there was equipment all over the place, so now we have proper facilities for it. You see the cabinets that we put in, the walkway that was talked about, that has been updated. The mulch that was in the process, we've been down there. I think Public Works did a great job on it. I'm getting a nod. And then also the agility equipment, or the toys that I call them. Debbie, in fact, was sitting right here. We were in the process of ordering them. I think that's something that is needed there. So it is ordered, and hopefully it'll be here soon. Yeah. And there's the 4 pieces. Again, we'll see how that works out. And of course, that's open if we need other stuff. Okay, good. Front page. Package center. Again, this is more talking points. I'm not going to go through this all, certainly not in a board meeting, but it's all there. What we tried to accomplish there is, this is everything we've done there. This is what we're in the process of doing. I want to add to that, and what we are working on now is that in addition to addressing the deferred maintenance, which I believe, and many of us believe for over 7-10 years wasn't done, it's all listed there, what we have done. Also increase the pickleball courts to meet demand. What I am doing, I'm getting feedback on, and I have met with Frank Brown, with Eddie Wells, and we've done this drill before on every other building. Frank is working on design sketches for us, that I hopefully can bring forward to the board liaison and to the advisory committee, so that we can see what exactly they are looking for, as well as what we think. So we have met with the county, trying to get an idea of what we can do. I would hope to have something work through the advisory committee and the liaison and everything by September, so we could certainly address if there is a need for this building by the September, beginning of the next year. Okay, front page. The marina, obviously this is big. This is what we have going on as we speak. We had to replace the gas lines. We did have a problem down there last year. It was contained. Obviously the team did a great job on it. These are the costs. They've been approved by the board. It's basically a $500,000 project. We're in the process. We believe we're on track. I believe we're on track. The team is down there working on it now. And obviously the goal was to be done somewhere in the beginning of May. If everything goes right, we're certainly there. I mean, we have a lot at stake there, but we will have a top-notch marina dock when done. Just one thing, it's around 500,000, probably 2 to 3% increase in costs that I will come forward to the board in the next one. But I don't think, it's maybe 10, 15,000. Turn the page. Yacht Club, okay, that was brought up last time. I think the gentleman's here, and rightfully so. See the new flags are up on the right. Those were the old flags on the left. I believe you mentioned it, whatever the board meeting was, we had them replaced. We didn't keep track of that in the future. One page. Safety AEDs, Linda's gonna jump in on that.
Okay, the outside AED was ordered for the Rocket Center. It has been installed. It is unlocked by the staff every day and will be closed when they leave for the day. The cost was $2,900. There has been an AED order for the police station, and we have scheduled some dates for the AED training with more to be determined.
Third page. Thank you, Linda.
LEAF program. This is the LEAF program that was approved at the budget. We will, as you know from the pictures, that process will not be done. It will be just used for drainage ditch maintenance only. But we will be having a yard open. You can purchase a yard. Well, it's free this year. The yard waste sticker is free if you would like to get one at the Public Works Department. And then you still can use the paper bags, and they will be picking them up in November and December of every year.
On the page, I'll take it. Okay, just on the other side, the admin renovations, I've been updating the board and everybody the last 2 months. It's pretty much completed. Feedback I've received from the team and everybody else that's gone through there is positive. We just have some work on the HVAC. Hopefully they're set up. I know they will be before it starts getting warm. The Steen properties was at Triple Crown lots. I was updated by Mrs. Steen. She informed me that 26 of 30 lots have been closed on and that the other 4 is in the process. So basically they've sold all the lots. It's a beautiful development, and we have ordered the mailboxes, and we're just waiting. We've picked out where it'll be. It's all been, and Public Works will work on it. We're just waiting for some of the material.
Okay, CPI violations. We did have a court date this week. They did sign a waiver that they will not be parking the vehicle at 81 Station Parkway. The other 5, or we had actually 6, one closed out last month. They closed out prior to the court date. So we do have a few more coming in. We probably have average, they said, I think we have 12 affidavits being sent next week to us. That will be the 2021 violations. Just a reminder, the courts were closed due to COVID. But this month we had a total of 60 new violations, 37 closed out with 152 open, and that doesn't include the 52 that is legal. Work orders, total work orders for the month. We had 74 new work orders, 73 were closed out. Majority still open in drainage, 47. So they do average 1 to 4 per work order, but most of them are being complied out. And customer service, we're down for the month. We were 113 last month. We're down to 81. That's phone calls and emails. So I encourage everyone to use the info at Ocean Pines or dial the 410-641-7717 with any questions.
Okay, the financials. Let me jump in first, and then Linda will read through the numbers for everybody. For the month, we were favorable, $34,000. However, on the police, we're favorable about $18,000. I could tell you that favorability is just timing. I am going to get bills there for the police department, and that's pretty much going to offset that. So that's a big piece of the 34,000. We're coming in kind of flat. What I mentioned last month, it's pretty much across the board, but that was the biggest piece I just want to highlight on the page. Okay, so where does that bring us for the year? We're still 1.1 million, but you can see the bulk of it is 90% of it is revenues. So, we hear about this about open positions, and that is a number that's in there, and I can answer that or highlight that or whatever. But the bulk of our favorability is favorability or organic revenue generated by the team. The amenities, driven by golf, obviously food and beverage, but across the board. Also rec and parks. Obviously, it's not a revenue generator. However, you're getting the same product we've always had at a more effective cost. Very, very proud of it. Turn the page.
Okay, for the month of February, favorable, unfavorable report. Public Works General Maintenance CPI was 24,000 favorable. That's usually actually due to the timing of the drainage, expenses. Golf operations, 19,000 favorable. That was the green fees and cart fees. Police, 18,000 favorable, and that was additional grant revenue that we allocated over the fiscal year. Yacht Club, 11,000 unfavorable. That was the sales were down, and the beverage and the food sales were down. Racket Sports, 7,000 unfavorable. That was some maintenance expenses. And Clubhouse Grill, 4,000 down, and that was services and supplies. And the other 5,000, and that was just due to variances versus budget with the 34,000 favorable.
Okay, thank you, Linda. The big part there I explained on the expenses for the police is the golf operations number. That's revenue. You can see after I take that out for timing, it's generated mostly by the golf ops revenue.
Okay.
Front page.
Year-to-date favorable, unfavorable report, Public Works General Maintenance CPI, 265,000 favorable. That was due to additional county roads revenue. Golf operations and maintenance, 228,000, that's all revenue. Aquatics, 135,000 favorable, that was due to revenues. Police, 116,000 favorable, that was additional grant revenue as well. Rec and Parks, 100,000 favorable. That was the camp additional revenue. Beach Club, 86,000 favorable. That was revenue as well. Yacht Club, 81,000 revenue. Marina, 33,000 revenue. Racket Sports, 27,000 revenue. Beach Parking, 23,000, and that was wages and benefits. Finance, 17,000 favorable. That was resale transfer fees. And then other 2,000 favorable, and that was variances versus budget.
Front page.
On an audit reserve report, total is 7.6 million favorable. And that is the total, with general replacement 5.8, bulkheads 0.7. Roads 0.8 and drainage 0.2 and new capital 0.1.
Okay, so the bottom line with that is you can see where we started the year with our reserves, and obviously our reserves are positive to that, along with everything that we have been doing. Turn the page.
Okay.
All right, so this is an important slide. It's a new slide the last couple of years. I never saw it before we took over, but Steve here and the team forecast where we think we're going to be at 4/30/23 at the end of the year. It's an estimate, it's a forecast, which is a good barometer and where we are with our cash as well as our reserves. So to me, it's an important schedule. If anybody has any questions on it, please info@oceanpines.org. Linda will get back to you, Steve, Mark, or myself. But I encourage everybody to look at that and send in constructive questions. Turn the page. Okay, just before Monica goes, and there's a lot of interaction between Monica, Budget and Finance, myself, Steve, Linda, but a lot in the news about the banking, and this is a national, it's not just local, it's national. If anything, we seem to be very good here on the Eastern Shore. I assure everybody that we have met with our bankers. They were in my office, they were in the GM's office first thing Monday morning. Credit to them. Certainly give customer service. I reached out to them on Sunday based upon everything I had heard last weekend. And Monica also will tell you that everything is secured. Everything is secured. Even though we deal with Bank of Ocean City, the Bank of Ocean City takes the money that's invested that we have there, and they invested in all CDARs. And we've been talking about this program since 2017, but just to reinforce it, that money is in every bank, probably 20, 30 banks. No more than $240,000 in the bank. So everybody knows it's FDIC insured by the government up to 240. Reed has also told me, and Steve, they also have backing within the bank on other items. So we reviewed that. We're comfortable with that. We are also opening another bank account at another bank, and we are transferring some money there, working with the Bank of Ocean City. so that we have, money in another place also as we cover operations throughout. Okay.
Thanks, John.
May I ask a question,
Please.
John? So John, what about treasury bills?
Yeah.
Looking into treasury bills?
So, and obviously even on myself, that's an excellent point. We are working on that. I said to Steve and to Mark's our senior accounting manager, is the way we invest, with the way we put our money in the Bank of Ocean City and then they invest it or spread it out among the banks. We can also do that with that same operating account and invest in T-bills, treasury notes. We can actually do that. So we are looking at that, possibly for money, whether it's a year from now or 6 months from now, we need it. I'd like to see some money there. So we are looking at that and I will be coming to you in the BNF with it.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Next item on the agenda is treasurer's report. Monica?
Hi, as of February 28th, the association had approximately $13 million in cash. Cash increased 700,000 from the same time last year. Cash decreased from February, 900,000. We have 11.1 million invested in CDARS and the remaining 1.9 million in insured sweep accounts, money market, and other operating accounts. We anticipate with the upward trend of interest rates to realize additional income through that. Frank has a question, Doug.
When will we see the delinquent assessment report that's
Today,
on February?
it's on the agenda today.
Any other questions? All right, next item on the agenda is public comments. Those who are welcome to make public comments. Please be advised when you make a public comment, state your name and address. The floor is now open for public comments.
Come up to the mic.
Come up to the podium.
I'm Richard Malone, 45 Nottingham Lane. Sent an email to the info that I hope most of you saw. Again, we're addressing an issue that we brought before the board 2 years ago about disabled vehicles, broken down vehicles. Picture I sent was probably the worst violation. But I really feel in following social media, which tends to be what we use as a thermometer for what's going on. We're in a turning point here. We're at a spot where even myself, I feel like, you've got a rule against a certain size fence, but you're not going to do anything about it. I've got properties around me that are pulling my property down. And I mean, gross violations. We're not talking like somebody left a toy out. I'm talking, the one I sent has a car that was there since 2008 because it's in the Google Earth pictures. It's got 2 motorcycles broke down in the front yard. It's got bicycles, trash. Backyard's got a golf cart propped up, but you see that from 589. Normally I wouldn't even notice it, but you ride down 589, that's what people see Ocean Pines is. That's what they see. And we're at a turning point. Like I'd be like, well, if you come after me over a fence, I'm going to sue you for discrimination because you're not doing anything with anybody else. And maybe you are, and it's all quiet, but we get different answers when we call. We've heard that it was the courts were backed up and we couldn't get into court. However, then just recently we were told, well, it was just given to the lawyer. Well, if it was just given to the lawyer, then I would assume it's not even been to the court yet if you're just giving it to a lawyer. I really feel like you see, when you read all the social media, you see everybody talking about, you do what you want. There are no rules. That's the census of it. I don't like being the bad guy. I moved in here and there's these nice set of rules and you think, okay, this is great. I used to live in Delaware. In Delaware, you could build a $300,000 house And next thing you know, some guy drags in a used 2-bedroom trailer and keeps cars on cinder blocks, and there's nothing you can do. That's why we chose neighborhoods like this that supposedly have protection. But apparently we don't have the protection. It's not being enforced. Years ago, I'm sure you all know MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. They got a lot of results by publicly posting the violations, publicly posting it. We get this newspaper that half of us just throw away, but it comes thrown in our driveway every week. Why don't we have a spot in that that's got all the violators listed? Maybe the embarrassment of being in that would be enough to move things forward. I mean, that's a pretty inexpensive way to try to enforce the rules. And we'd also heard that there was a referendum at one point to try to come up with a method that you could enforce the rules. Because it's our understanding that even though we have the rules, there is no way to enforce it. We don't have the power to fine people. We don't have the power. You know, I think there needs to be look into changing the rules, changing the enforcement of the rules somehow with the bylaws so that we can actually get something from it. We can see things, get some teeth into the rules. Because right now, there was a kid across the street from us, has a little girl, and had a kitchen set in his driveway that she played with. Didn't bother me a bit. I understand she's playing with her toys. I think it's great. Live on back up 589. You wouldn't want your child playing back there by the traffic. They were told they had to take that out. They were upset over it.
Yep.
I personally feel like they should have come to the board and said, look, we're going to sue you. This guy's got these cars down here, been there for the last 10, 15 years, and you're not doing anything. But my daughter has a play set and you want to come down hard on us. It's a very imbalanced system. It's like you're trying to chip away at the easy stuff, but the hard stuff, you just kind of put your hands up and walk away. And that's how I feel. I think really the enforcement, and to me, I think publicly listing violators be a good way to get something changed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And John, could we do a follow-up with Mr. Malone, was it? Can we do a follow-up? You mentioned properties next to his that might, for lack of a better term, extreme violation with some of the things you described. Follow up with him and take a look.
Sure. Yes.
Thank you.
Also, Doug, I did hear what he said, violators list in news release from OPA.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And unless there's some administrative burden to doing that, I think that's a very good idea. We should
I'm
probably
going to talk to Josh and Julie and Linda. Do you want to say anything about what's in the courts?
The violation list is actually under the committee, architectural review committee, under their minutes. It's posted updated after every meeting.
All right, so perhaps, because I didn't even know that, so perhaps you make it more prominent on the website to say, by the way, here's where you go find that information. Is that
Right.
sound reasonable for you? I got no problem with that.
Newsletter.
But if it's more public,
Right.
Right,
the more public it is, the more power it has.
I agreed.
If it's a newspaper that other people in Ocean City see.
Point taken. Point taken. So thank you for your comment.
So I need to check a couple
Okay,
places,
we'll follow up on that.
and I'll do it. We'll do it.
Okay.
And Doug, I
Yeah.
have a question. Mr. Malone raises a good point about enforcement. The Architectural Review Committee, for which I'm the liaison, the board liaison, I go to every meeting. They do what they have at their disposal to enforce. They've recently started asking the board to restrict property owner rights for people who are in continuing violations, such as this property next to yours. And the board has agreed to do that. We are doing that. You know, what that means is that the individual would not be able to vote in our elections, would not be able to use our paid amenities. So that it's effective to the extent that those people care about that. If they don't care about it, it's not effective. Some of our DRs have finding authority. Not all of them do. I'm told that most of the violations that are continuing are in sections that do not have finding authority. But the Architectural Review Committee is also asking the board to use their finding authority when they can. There also is a referendum that is kind of in the works for updating our DRs to incorporate the rules and regulations from the county having to do with short-term rentals. And that is in process someplace in our administration. But a next step that we might consider is updating the DRs to expand the finding authority into all sections. And so there are things that we've looked at as a board and that our Architectural Review Committee is looking at. So I know it looks like nothing is being done, but what we are doing is what is at our disposal to do per our governing documents. But thank you for your comments and your excellent suggestion about publicizing the violators.
What is the process?
I'm sorry, we're not going to enter into a discussion. I think we've got enough to do at this point. I think hopefully that addresses your issue. And I'm sure there's ways to follow up accordingly. So, but thank you for the suggestion. Other public comments?
Hey, good morning. I'm Jack Levering, 6 Weeping Willow Court. And I'm a little different this morning. I know you have some complaints and some gripes that come before you, but I come before you with a big thank you. As you remember, I was here at the last board meeting and I brought up some things about the dog park and our fine manager, Mr. Viola, took some action along with Debbie and Ed Wells and some of the folks, and some things are happening down there. And it's really gratifying. With this wet weather, we would have pools of mud that the dogs slog through and the people too. So with that nice mulch that we have now as the covering, that's not a problem. The gravel up to the entryway was wonderful. We had to walk through some muddy areas and that was taken care of. So the rakes and the hose and so forth that we have to use for the dogs digging, they were sort of hanging from a board, and as Mr. Viola said, we got a nice cabinet there now. So we thank you for this, and we thank all involved, including the board, for your action, and Debbie and her department. We did have an occurrence a couple times where some people are coming in with a wheelchair. A gentleman with a family came in with a wheelchair last week, and it was just horrendous to see them try to get the wheelchair just into the dog park section. Maybe a few cement blocks could be put in there just for a pad that maybe they could push a wheelchair in. His chair almost upset. It was bad. So if you could consider that, I'd appreciate it. And Mr. Viola, we appreciate all your good work. We're looking forward to the agility course.
Yep.
And some people are ready to start training their dogs and doing that. So I come to you with a thank you. And we have a wonderful community and the dog park, and the dogs are happy.
Thank you. And John, if you would look at the thing.
ADA, I have it. Yeah, I have it. Debbie,
We already just-
Yeah, we're ready. Yes.
Thank you. Other public comments?
Good morning. My name is Laura Pangrass and I live at 2 Harpoon Road. I am here as an individual resident and an individual member who happens to participate in the committee of the Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee. And these are just purely my observations and recommendations and suggestions. I'm here to just add a comment because I know coming up, you have lots of items left on the agenda that pertain to our committee. We have been very busy, but the one in particular that I wanted to comment on personally was is the resolution B09 about the video recordings and the record retention policy. In it, the suggested timeframe to keep videos from, especially the committees who choose to record their meetings, is 2 months. I would like to see you extend that and make a larger number, simply because As we all know, sometimes it takes many more months than 2 months just to get a topic here at a director's meeting. And if there is further discussion that needs to happen, it would be beneficial to be able to go back and see what our committee's discussion was on that topic, to be able to understand why we might have recommended, some wording or some changes, whatever. But sometimes that occurs way after 2 months. We all know that minutes are supposed to be held by all of our committees and also the directors. It would be helpful to know that, as we all know, that different secretaries, whatever, make their minutes. Some of them are very detailed and some are very generic and basic, right? And if we're required by law to be able to keep the minutes available to access, they should be as in-depth as possible. If you don't have a set of minutes that really put in the thought and document the discussion, and when I say discussion, we're not saying so-and-so said this, so-and-so and said that. It's the general ideas that we talk about, pertaining to that item, that needs to be documented. And if we have the resource to be able to go back and view a video recording, our committee chooses, and we vote on it every single time, to record our meetings, so that they're available not only for us to go back and look at again to help us make our very detailed minutes, but also for any resident to, if you're really up to sleep, listen, want to find something to go to sleep, watch one of our meetings, because we have meetings that last anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. We also, I would like to, so what I'm suggesting is, save those recordings, but think about changing the number from 2 to maybe 6 months to maybe a calendar year. I don't know how long it would be, because not every committee records theirs and needs to be saved. But there are certain committees out there that we all know that can have a lot of, not controversy, but, discussions. It could be the elections committee, it could be the bylaws committee, it could be whatever committee. But to be able to have another resource to go back and see accurate and different perspectives and conversations would be helpful. So I'd like to ask you to, when you get to that one, it's the last item, to think about coming back and doing some more discussion on that. At this moment, I would also like to thank my fellow committee members. There are 5 of us total. We have been meeting every 2 weeks for the last several months to get caught up on all of these things, because between transitions with new board members, new liaisons, just whatever, things have gotten missed that had been initially presented like last year, and we're trying to get caught up and make sure that they're presented now, which is why you have so many on us. I would like to encourage other committee members of other committees to, if you have a lot coming up on your agenda, meet more than once a month or once every 3 or 4 months. If we can come together as 5 people, plus our liaison, plus some guests that past members that do join us at our meetings every 2 weeks to get our work done, it can be done by other committees as well. There is no reason other than, we have only missed 1 meeting, and that was due to a personal loss that I had. With losing my son 1 week before a meeting. We did cancel the November one, but we have met since then, either monthly or every 2 weeks. So I want
Oh,
Hi, I'm Sherry Clifford and I'm from 103 Teal Circle. I am a full-time resident in good standing here in Ocean Pines and have been very active member in supporting Ocean Pines Association and our community. I have donated to our volunteer fire department and to various Ocean Pines families in their time of need. I have also participated and supported many of the Ocean Pines events such as Bay Day, Arbor Day, Light Up the Pines, as well as managed and collected over $5,000 through GoFundMe, gift cards, clothing, and toys for a local family that tragically lost their home to a massive fire. In addition, as a new local business owner, I support our quarterly magazine through paid advertising, and I'm also a member of the Ocean Pines Chamber of Commerce, the Ocean Pines Golf Club, and the Ocean Pines Business Network International. I would also like to thank all those who have helped me in support of our community. In 2022, I was a member of the Ocean Pines Search Committee and successfully worked with the team led by Mr. Tom Piatti. I spent a lot of time being taught the ropes and my responsibilities by Mr. Piatti and looked at him as a mentor in also learning just who was who in the world of Ocean Pines. I asked a lot of questions to Tom, and he was a great teacher. I executed my duties correctly and on time. I have recently submitted my application to chair the upcoming 2023 Search Committee and look forward to continuing my volunteer services within the community. In addition, I submitted my application to participate on the Election Committee back in November of 2022. With the committee's first come, first served policy, I was told my application would be kept on file should an opening arise. With the resignation of Elaine Brady, there is now an opening. And should Ken Petrini not fill this position, I look forward to working with the committee as I would be next in line. I have the experience and skills required to assist in restoring faith and confidence back into the Ocean Pines voting process and can help to avoid the same issues and mistakes that occurred in the 2022 election. Thank you.
other public comments?
Morning. First of all, thank you, everybody, for being on the
I said name.
Tim Eisenhuth, 10 Lookout Point. I just wanted to say thank you. I know this is, can be a tremendous amount of work, and some of us just don't have time to do that in our daily lives. I just wanted to ask for a point of a clarification. I think we were talking about the leaf pickup removal. It just wasn't clear. There's a lot of chatter online about what does that and what does that not include. So I just wanted to know, will the homeowners be responsible for cleaning out the drainage? And if not, who's going to do that? And then what is considered part of the leaf pickup process? That's all.
Doug, take that.
Yeah, we got it.
The leaf vacuum, right now, what is currently happening is the leaves from the ditch are raked up to the street and Ocean Pines comes out and vacuums them. That will be eliminated. You will be responsible for bagging those leaves, putting them at the curb where Ocean Pines will pick them up along with Republic Service. So they will be picked up, but they just need to be bagged in paper bags.
And the other thing on that, what we do see, and I'm not saying everybody, but what should not happen is we should not be raking our leaves from the entire yard into the ditch as a holding pattern. That should not happen. So if anybody thinks that's part of the process, that's not. What's in your yard, you really need to take care of and bag. If you do bag it, obviously Republic will pick it up as well as Public Works, but they shouldn't be raked from the yard into the ditch as a holding pattern. That's not good for drainage. Okay.
Sir, did that address your?
That answers the question. There's a concern with elderly residents not being able to maneuver and do those type of tasks and clear so we can.
So noted. So noted.
I'm sure you got it.
Other public comments?
Okay, Frank.
Oh, Frank, go right ahead.
In relation to that, what is the status of the sticker for opening the yard for leaf disposal and yard waste disposal?
So there'll be no charge for those stickers. How's the process that they pick them up, that they get these stickers?
They were ordered. I'm not sure if they're in yet, but Public Works did order them last month. You can pick them up at Public Works, so you can give them a call at 410-641-7425, and then you can go ahead and,
And there'll be no charge.
no charge this year.
So when the stickers become available, there'll be an announcement in relation to if somebody's cleaning out their, like right now, doing house cleaning, right? It would be useful to have that information.
Yeah, I'll make sure of it.
The timer.
Bill, we'll put that out there.
Time to wake up.
Thank you. Other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close the floor for public comments. Move on to the next item on our agenda, which is capital requests. We have no capital requests this month. The next item on the agenda is CPI violations. We have no CPI violations to report this month. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. We have no unfinished business from the previous board meeting. Next item of business is new business. First order of business under new business is a motion to approve the election committee recommendations. Rick.
The motion is to obtain board approval for 2 recommendations pertinent to the process for the 2023 Board of Directors election presented by the Election Committee. Number 1, approval of the Election Committee to continue the research to obtain credible scanning software, conduct end-user testing, and hire an independent contractor to perform ballot scanning under the Election Committee visual supervision. And number 2, approval of the Election Committee to suspend online voting for 2023, return to paper ballots effectively used that has been used for decades, and continue to research and find a contractor that has an alternative control number solution in order to eliminate weighing confusion experienced by the multi-lot members in the 2022 election. Projected online voting implementation is 2024. The purpose and effect is by approving the recommendations by the Election Committee, it will provide a level of confidence to all homeowners that voting procedures, when followed, and provide accurate and viable tabulations for each candidate, and that every vote is properly accounted for and tabulated. Some background. In October 2022, the newly appointed Election Committee received 2 charging documents consisting of 10 tasks. Conduct and review with practices and procedures concerning ballots, count errors and glitches in the 2022 Board of Directors election, and render a written report by December 1st, 2022. The Election Committee rendered an initial report to the Board of Directors on November 14th, 2022. The report contained 2 major recommendations: place the scanning software used in 2022, conduct user testing and outsource ballot scanning to an independent contractor, and suspend online voting for 2023 by returning to paper ballots effectively used for decades. Of note was task 9, provide a level of confidence to all homeowners that voting procedures, when followed, can provide accurate and verifiable tabulation for each candidate, and that every vote is properly counted and tabulated. The Election Committee presumed that they had fulfilled this requirement. On January 19, 2023, the Election Committee provided a supplemental report to answer questions from the directors emailed by the Election Committee liaison. Directors commented from the January board meeting. The Election Committee expanded on recommendations number 2 above to further explain that the back and forth multiple electronic email transmission and exchange of the data with a vote HOA contractor was complex, made additional work for the Election Committee / OPA staff, made room for error, beside the potential for data spillage and the release of personal information. To that end, the Election Committee concluded that the total suspension of online voting was justified. February 18, 2023, regular OPA monthly board meeting, Chairman Piatti addressed the Board of Directors. After additional research and work sessions performed by the Election Committee, they developed an alternative. Although the Election Committee continues to stand on recommendation 1, the Election Committee changed their position on the recommendation 2. The Election Committee requests the Board of Directors approve these 2 recommendations and move forward with their work.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I have some comments, sorry. So this motion appears to me to be premised on a few assertions. One is that the software used by the scanner is flawed. And I went back and looked, thank you for continuing to have the video of the meetings online, because I was able to go back to the November election committee meeting and look at how that conclusion was come to by the committee. And the logic that was used didn't hang together for me. What was said in that meeting was that it's considered flawed, that there were two issues related to the scanning. One was that the users of the scanner had not been trained on the software. The second issue was that the users of the scanner declared the software to be known to have problems. And I'm assuming, is that known by people who are not trained on it, as they were not trained? So that doesn't hang together very well for me. Another premise is that the use of paper ballots has occurred flawlessly for decades. And as Director Daley pointed out 2 meetings ago, I believe, we've never looked backward at our paper ballot process to ensure that that has indeed been flawless. So that's a premise that I think doesn't hold together logically. And then the assertion is that the online voting system is unable to be audited. And I saw no evidence in the discussion of this topic in the meeting or in the reports that the election committee put forth that provides evidentiary support of that assertion. I saw there was no indication that the manufacturer and the developer of that system had been contacted to delve deeply into the extent to which the accuracy of that voting tabulation system could be independently verified after the election. So, I'm going to say that I'm not going to vote against this motion, but I'm not going to vote for it. I feel like I need to abstain because I feel that the logic that it's premised on is flawed.
Other discussion? Frank?
Yeah, as far as the recommendations themselves on the motion, to continue to research to obtain credible stand, I'm fine with that. I've always been kind of agnostic on the electronic voting, or internet voting is a proper term. I've certainly used it this last time, but certainly there were problems with it. Where I have a problem with this whole thing, there's a fundamental bedrock in our election system, and that fundamental bedrock is each lot gets 1 vote. And over the years, we've discussed like what happens if a husband and wife, if you own 2 lots and they disagree on the candidates, and the response has been, well, have the husband vote for 1 lot and the wife vote for another. What I don't understand is why we can't get to the public specific information on the number of lots that voted. And this whole issue that's drug on now way, way too long to build confidence in our community could easily be solved, providing one thing that every one of us sitting up here has been told is true. And what that is on the envelope that you receive and you send back in, or on the identification for electronic voting that you send back in, there is identifiers that talk about your lot and provide other information. And I believe that other information, although nobody that I know of on any board that I've ever attended has seen a scan of that barcode. I believe my name is on it, my lot is on it, and the number of lots that I own is on it. Okay? And I go back to one of the things, and this is the fundamental issue. When I look at their report, it says, due to the envelopes being separated from the ballots, it is impossible, even by outside auditor, to determine how the mailed-in multiple lot owners voted. I agree with that. What I want to know is how many lots voted. Run a scan of the envelopes and tell us how many lots voted. I understand that information is available on the envelopes, which are still intact. That's and it's available on the Voda HOA system, which is still intact. That's step one to cure all the chatter that's going on. How many lots voted? Number two, if that information that we've all been told is on that envelope is correct, run a list of the lots that voted manually, run a list of the lots that voted electronically, and compare. I own one lot. If you see my lot on the manual list and on the electronic list, you got a problem. Why can't we do that? And why hasn't that been done? And why hasn't that information been made public to the board and to the community? It's a simple, we're turning something into something where you need a PhD in astrophysics for something that one of my grandchildren can solve. I don't understand why.
Noted. Other public comment or other discussion? Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I've reviewed both videos. I reviewed the reports of the election committee reports. And I think to some degree, frankly, the elections committee should be congratulated. They have invested a lot of time and energy in moving forward in voting with paper. They have addressed the paper stock, the issue of whether or not the ballot in 2022 was folded and difficult to be scanned, and the bleeding, the size and configuration of the traditional ballot. And they apparently have reached an agreement on how to regarding the scan software, which in all candor, I am out of my element, and so I'll defer to their collective wisdom. But there are several other issues that were not resolved or addressed. At the February board meeting, I specifically asked Chair Piatti about why an outside vendor was necessary for the counting of ballots. My recollection is that in one of the two earlier reports by the committee, there was a suggestion that there could be a conflict of interest in using Ocean Pines IP staff, despite the fact that the staff has been used in the past. The January report of the committee specifically states, such outstanding quote, eliminates potential conflict of interest claims, but it's very difficult to grasp how the staff has a conflict of interest. And there's no evidence that there was ever a conflict of interest. No answer was provided at the February board meeting. Chair Piatti did not respond. And nothing more has been said, and we have no idea whether the committee wants to bring an outside vendor or what the cost would be or who the vendor might be, or even if one is necessary. And from this board, majority of whom were clearly concerned about the cost of paying for an audit back in October, to buy off on the issue that we should have an outside vendor to count the ballots strikes me as sort of nonsensical. At the March 10th meeting of the committee, Chair Piatti stated that they may have found a company that can handle the voting using a control number method for tracking who votes. While that is welcome news, there does not appear to be any suggestion or planned follow-up with the idea of possibly having online voting for this year's election. In other words, they found a company, and after that, everybody fell off the cliff. Nothing happened. They've invested a lot of time and energy on the paper side and very little other than identifying a potential company to do the electronic voting. Attached to the motion submitted by Rick is a task list of 10 specific tasks. And I note that only 2 have any entry under the resources required. And one of these, to determine the governing documents were followed as written, has only the entry for resolution M06, election and referendum procedures. Whether or not the committee has fulfilled all of the 10 tasks, none of the 10 tasks, some of the 10 tasks, we don't know. We're still working with a blank slate on that. And to the best of my recollection, having watched both meeting videos, this matter has not even been, the matter of M06 has not even been discussed by the elections committee. They announced their next meeting in early April as the election draws ever closer. Hard to figure out if the committee is telling us all but the two identified tasks that have been completed, or if there's more to be done. The last committee meeting had a discussion at the end about more future work sessions. We have no idea what those work sessions will be. We don't really know what the product was of the previous work sessions. It's also worth noting that the proposed motion by Rick was dated March 8th, 2023, and was emailed to the board members either the 8th or the 9th of March. The Elections Committee making the recommendation met on March 10th. And at that meeting, there was no motion, no discussion, and no vote on the recommendations made in the proposed motion. There certainly was no such action taken at the only prior meeting of the committee on November the 3rd. Finally, it's necessary to turn to the issue of online voting. To date, no new information has been forthcoming from the committee to justify the elimination of online voting. Understand, the committee raised some potential issues relating to hacking, loss of private information, etc. Not that it occurred, but that there was a potential that it might be. There's no evidence that it did occur. There's no evidence there was ever an attempt for it to occur. But even if that is a real concern, the logical next step would have been for the committee to go back to the vendor and inquire. And if that vendor couldn't provide the answers they wanted, they should have searched other vendors. None of that happened, but we're still left with the recommendation to take electronic voting off the table. I used the term last month about disenfranchising voters, and some objected to that term. The fact of the matter is our governing documents provide a right to vote electronically. People avail themselves of that right. Now, I admit it's sort of, we can use it, we don't have to use it, that's a decision to be made. But they availed themselves of that right, and there was no problem. Both committees identified no problem with electronic voting. Yet we're left with the recommendation that we should stop electronic voting with no evidence that there's any reason to, any new justification has been brought out, or any potential logistical problems exist. Now, leaving aside the spurious and potential possibilities for hacking, etc., the remaining issue appears to be what the committee described as a cumbersome process to avoid the risk that someone voting both electronically and by traditional means, by paper. Again, the so-called cumbersome process met its goal. It was to make sure that if somebody voted electronically, that they could not vote, or their vote by paper would not be counted. And so they required an exchange of information between the recipient of the paper ballots, the vendor doing the electronic balloting, and the election committee stuck between the two, forwarding the information back and forth. That's the cumbersome process that they have identified. There's no indication that that system failed. And in fact, the accounting provided by both committees, prior elections committee and this elections committee, are consistent. And so we're left with the potential that a new vendor could achieve the same goal with the supposed cumbersome process. Now, maybe there's a better process, but there's been nothing done to explore whether this cumbersome process failed or whether there's a better process to exist. Now, as I said, both committees have reviewed. There's no problem stated with the electronic voting. And in fact, this committee specifically said that they found no problem, stated that automated reports of the contractor are considered accurate based upon the safeguards that were in place. And if the weighting system, which attracted the greatest amount of attention, is by itself a reason to go with electronic voting, it would appear that to be potentially solvable with this new company, briefly described by Chair Piatti at the last meeting. Look, I have no question in my mind that this motion will pass. I played with the idea of offering an amendment to the motion to strike the recommendation of the committee relating to electronic voting. But I will tell you, it would have been far better if the committee invested as much time and effort in addressing the issues of electronic voting with the same level of achievement that it found in addressing the paper ballot issues, which is where all the problems arose in the first place. But I'm not convinced that the committee has answered all of our questions, followed proper procedure, and has what it appears found an endpoint where it wanted to end the discussion and then constructed a path to get back to that endpoint. So I'll be voting no on this motion.
Yeah, just a point of order. Number one, I'm pretty flexible, but per our governing documents, our comments are supposed to be within 5 minutes. So let's just be aware of that. I'm certainly not going to have a timer on everybody, but let's make sure we get to the point when we're talking about something. My comment, Frank, I want to make sure I understand something. You were talking about the need to get information regarding the number of ballots that were cast. So I went out on the
Ballots, Doug, lots.
Yeah, right here. So I'm looking at the September 7th, 2022 report of the Elections Committee for 2022. Voting results for the 2022 election. It says return percentage 37%, 7,458 ballots mailed representing 7,723 eligible member voted. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of data. Is that the data you were looking for?
No, the data that I'm looking for, it's really pretty simple. How many lots voted? Okay, manually from scanning the envelopes, and how many lots voted electronically by scanning the codes that still exist in records, and a comparison to see that there are no single owner lots that exist on both lists.
Okay, all right. Point taken. I just wanted to say that that information is out there. So I didn't want to, there is some information out there basically saying 2,028 ballots, including 18 duplicates, were scanned, counted, and so on and so forth. So I think it's
ballots,
part of the information.
Yes.
It's part of the information, right?
In my
I understand the differentiation between ballots and lots, okay? Now, one will just say, let's clarify that. As a ballot, in other words, one could surmise that two ballots could be submitted from one lot. All right, we know that's not the case. So we just want to clarify, I'm with you. We just want a clarification. The idea of ballot and lot mean the same thing, okay?
But they don't.
Yeah, and we'll get a clarification. I just want to make sure I understood what you were saying. See, with regard to your comment, yeah, fair enough. I think one of the things that come to my mind is that because the election's so close, because there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, I think it's important to go back to that sort of commonality where we had a specific result that we knew we were confident in, and that was the paper ballots. Okay, I'll tell on myself, I didn't have the exact detail with regard to how the weighting affected the online voting, because I'm still trying to understand, did it count it specifically one for one, or did it do some sort of averaging and so on and so forth? Okay, so with that question still not answered, it gives me pause for concern to say, well, let's just eliminate that from the equation, and let's move forward with something we know is going to produce those kinds of results. Should we abandon electronic voting? No. Remember, you're talking to a retired chief information officer. Technology was my life. We absolutely need to move forward with online voting, but we've got to have a system, that we can stress test, that we can put through the ringer a number of times and get 100% accurate results. And I think that's what the committee, let me finish, that's what the committee, is looking to do. I also want to make sure that I understood your comment when you said there were 10 tasks that, that had no resolution. Well, I'm looking at the election committee report right here in our packet. And it says, task 1, and it says findings, recommendation. And there's a paragraph, and there's, right here, there's, a bunch of them all have, a response under, findings and recommendations. So I'm not really sure that I understood that you said that there were no findings and recommendations from the committee, because I'm kind of reading them right here. So I just want to make sure that, unless you're referring to something else.
Well, in fairness, Doug, I was actually referring to the form that was attached.
Oh, well, yeah, the form doesn't have anything on it.
And
report.
I understand those were the listed tasks. There's nothing that suggests on that form, other than the comments of the elections committee, that those tasks were met. Now, whether or not they've achieved the level of confidence that specifically is identified in the resolutions is a matter to determine. But that's really what I was driving at. Let me go back to one thing that you said.
I think we've had enough. Any other comments before I give you the floor back?
Okay.
Comments?
But
wait a minute.
That very comment.
Hold on. Robert's Rules of Order. Okay. If other directors want to make a comment, they have to be recognized before I give the floor to somebody who's already made a comment. So is there any other comments by anybody else? Okay, Steve, you have the floor.
Oh, thanks, Doug. Yeah, I guess I'd make two observations. One is, I certainly appreciate your comment relating to, where are we and how do we address the different approaches versus electronic and paper ballots. I find it somewhat interesting that there's almost a double standard here, where two committees have said there was no issue with the electronic voting, but the second committee is going to say we're going to stop it. And on the paper ballots, where apparently all of the problems existed, for whatever reason, all the problems existed, that's our tried and true method of proceeding forward. I'm not sure that follows logic in any way, shape, or form. And the fact of the matter is, I agree with you, there's difficulty in identifying what impact the weighing had. But my recollection, and I wish I had saved the number, is that the number of multiple lot owners voted electronically was relatively small. It's not even clear that the multiple lot owners took advantage of voting, as many as them did have multiple lots, took advantage of voting the multiple lot, and they may have just voted, even by paper, just one ballot, even though they could have voted 5, 6, whatever number of times lots they owned. And of course, the other point being, as someone made reference to, I think last month, well, suppose I own multiple lots and my wife wants to vote differently than I voted. I guess you could do that depending upon the lot, but our votes are by lot, not by people. Yeah. And so that's what you're counting. But I certainly, I understand the point. I sort of know what's going to happen. But to suggest that, we should go to the tried and true method when that's where the problem existed, I find that a little difficult to back. I'd leave it at that.
Frank?
I mean, to me, the whole discussion again goes back to if the conclusions are basically based on one hypothesis, that's the number of ballots and the number of lots jive. No problem exists once you get the lot information. Or if you find that me, who owns one lot, twice, voted electronically and voted manually, then a big problem exists. But until you have that information, I appreciate the work. I have no reason to question the integrity, but it's based on a false hypothesis. And that false hypothesis is that at the end of the day, the lots and the ballots are going to come out and make sense. And that analysis has not been done.
Stuart?
The confusion we're talking about revolves around this hybrid voting system and the idea that people were disenfranchised during this past election. Were they disenfranchised? I think you enfranchise people by making sure each person gets a ballot by how many lots you own. The tried and true method. One of the issues that Chair Piatti recognized right away was having an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper folded 3 times had issues with the scanner. You make the stock the same size as the envelope, no folds. I think that increasing the thickness of the stock so that there's no bleed through on the ballot selections, I have no problem at all with going forward for this election with a paper-only ballot for everybody. This way, everybody's enfranchised. Because last time, there were people that had multiple lots that didn't know that they had to request multiple ballots, paper ballots, if they wanted to do that. Some of them got one ballot if they had 2 or 3 places. So if they didn't go online and vote online, they were disenfranchised by that previous experience. I think Chairman Piatti's recommendations are right on where they should be. You stress test online voting for next election to make sure there are no bugs, because if you listen to all of us talk here, there's all kinds of problems. Where was the problem? Where is this? What? You can eliminate that. Stress test the new system for the next election. If you can't get it right, stay with paper. To quote somebody, I like paper. Thank you.
What?
So first I'll beg to differ. There are all kinds of problems were found with the electronic voting. Those committees said there were no problems identified. There are hypotheticals that might happen. And as Director Jacobs pointed out, none of that was found to have occurred. But, and I will reiterate that what I said 2 meetings ago, that this committee came into this with a foregone conclusion. That conclusion was that paper ballots should be used, not online voting. They did a lot of work, I will grant them that, but all of that work was in service of proving the hypothesis that they had in mind. And that hypothesis was that paper ballot voting is superior to electronic voting. That's not how you go about research. You go about research to making sure that you cannot disprove your hypothesis. And so, you know, I'm kind of shifting my position here to voting against this. The one thing that I think is absolutely critical going forward is the thing that was identified that did not happen with the previous paper ballot voting is that the users of the scanner were not properly trained on the software. That if we're going to get new software, we're not going to trust that that software can be operated without proper training. So that absolutely needs to be part of any paper ballot process.
All right, let's finish up the discussion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to take the approval of the election committee recommendations, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hey,
Nay.
Any abstentions? Please record the vote. 5 yea, 2 nay, 1 abstention. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, an update on the delinquent accounts report. Monica?
My topic is to provide an update of the delinquent accounts, a discussion to inform the membership of the delinquent account status. The background is the association's declarations of restrictions and articles of reinstatement cite actions the board of directors is authorized to take for collection of delinquent annual assessments, including the establishment of the annual rate of interest to be assessed on unpaid charges from the date of delinquency. As of February 28th, 2023, $8,511,831 was billed for the 2022-2023 year. There are 210 accounts with outstanding balances. 197 liens have been filed. The total outstanding amount, including interest, liens, fees, is $763,156. And the outstanding amount without the interest, liens, and fees is $141,628. Write-offs for the 2022-2023 year total $18,777.
Any questions about the delinquent accounts?
if I can,
No. Nice, Steve. For Steve.
thank you, Doug. Monica, just so I'm clear, the resolution is to establish a interest rate for the payment on the delinquent accounts, correct?
Well, we did that in
Yeah,
February,
that's due in February, and we did that.
and we did that at the February meeting. It's 6%.
So
this is-
this is to take action for the collection.
Yeah, yes, this is what's actually delinquent at the end of February.
Okay.
The numbers.
I guess what I'm sort of curious about, and maybe I'm missing it, is there a mechanism in place for us to actually secure the payments that are due to us?
I can answer that having tenure here. It's been an issue for a very, very long period of time.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I think, Frank, you and I had a discussion a couple of years ago about the amount of outstanding assessments that had not yet been paid. There are a small group that haven't paid them in, help me out, it was like almost 10 years. That was, and obviously as each year goes by, the chances of collecting that money diminishes, right? So the focus was to try to see what can we do to prevent, people from actually getting on that list, all right? And although they still do, filing the liens and so on and so forth is the only recourse we have right now. Do we have any other legal recourse, other than maybe I don't want to use the word harassing, but maybe reminding them on a regular basis that they owe the money is probably the only thing we could do right now, other than maybe following it up with a note from our attorney. But traditionally, it's just been very, very difficult to collect those outstanding fees, although not for lack of trying. And I'm not suggesting that we give up on it. I'm suggesting that we stay the course and continue to focus on, these individuals and see if we can collect some of it. I think one of the salient points that was made is the outstanding balance, including all the fees and late fees and charges, is like 760,000. But, if one of the things maybe to consider, if it's a way to get this money, it'd be, eliminate those and just focus on the 146,000 that's really part of it. That might be a way to, maybe get those folks over the, maybe we're willing to forgive the late charges in order to collect some of that money back. It's a possibility. And I think that that's one of the things that maybe we'll recommend to John and ask him to take a look at it, and also to the BNF committee and say, guys, what do you think we ought to do with this? Let's come up with an idea. This has been an ongoing issue. We live with it. It's not, certainly something one could argue that $760,000 of uncollected, fees has an effect on our budget. Well, it certainly does. Now, but the possibility of collecting that goes down tremendously, as I said. So we'll see where.
So really, this is just an information.
Yeah, it's just information.
And whatever the potentially pragmatic solution would be in the future will be developed.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth noting that if you look back to 2017 and 18, the amount is, almost $1 million. So $967,000 total outstanding. And this year it's 763. So there is this trend, a downward trend of outstanding amounts. So efforts are made, but
still a lot of money.
it absolutely is a lot of money.
Okay, Frank?
Yeah, Monica, to my question earlier, the report that Doug referenced is exactly what I wanted to see, the breakdown of this 763, because as I recall, there were 52 properties that accounted for 98% of that. Some of them had outstanding assessments in excess of $25,000. And with their payment plan that they were on, nobody in this room will live long enough to see them collected. Okay? Now, look, I'm gonna make it very clear. I'm not suggesting anything except that we get that list and take a look at it. Because that list, I will guarantee you, contains people that have paid their assessment forever. They retired when they were 52, they're now 92, they've outlived their money. Okay, I will also guarantee you there are people on that list that are sitting on properties that are worth within shouting distance of $1 million, whose attitude is, I'm not going to pay the association a damn penny. They can collect it from my estate. Okay, I will tell you that there are other associations, including on the Eastern Shore, Captain Cove, and on the Western Shore, Columbia Association, that would take the latter situation and would immediately foreclose on a property.
Okay.
Not suggesting we do that, but I'm suggesting we take a real good look at that because, you're getting close to double digits of the annual assessment being held by a small amount of properties that won't pay the assessment. And when Doug and I did the report, I think everybody was satisfied that we had adequate protection to eventually get the money. I'm not sure that I haven't seen that report in at least 2 years, maybe 3. I'd like to see it again.
Okay, so noted.
Colette?
Just a couple of points of clarification on the percentage line here. That 0.09 does not reference 0.09%. It's 9%.
Correct.
It is outstanding. And then what does that prepaid number of 220 refer to?
Where people have a credit in their account.
Gotcha.
So it's a credit.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll work with Ruth Ann, for that list.
Yeah, I can send you a copy of the list that Doug and I did.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's on the spreadsheet already, so I'll send it to you sometime today.
All right,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. Thank you for bringing that up. Next item on the agenda, second reading of revisions to resolution B07. Steve?
Thank you, Doug. The motion is to approve the revisions to resolution B07 dealing with petitions. The proposed revision states who may represent petitioners in addressing the board on the topic of the submitted petition. The revision to B07 was recommended by the bylaws committee and had its first reading at the January 21, 2023 board meeting. The revised resolution B07 explicitly states that a person making a presentation on behalf of the petition must be a member eligible to vote on the petition. And it also allows for the representative of the petition to be assisted by one or more other people.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I'll just make a note that this is very clear. The information has been added to section 3B, and it's pretty straightforward. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting this as a second reading for B07, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It was unanimous. Next item on the agenda is a second reading of revisions to Resolution F03. Steve?
Thanks again, Doug. The motion is to approve the revisions to Resolution F03 dealing with financial reserve accounts to establish a separate drainage reserve account. The proposed revision establishes a separate reserve account to aid in funding future expenditures drainage in Ocean Pines. This revision to F03 was recommended by the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee and had its first reading at the January 21st, 2023 board meeting. Adoption of this revision would allow for better multi-year planning and to offset expenditures over a longer period of time for drainage projects. Previously, drainage was included in the road maintenance reserve account.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Again, British
Question.
Stewart.
Yeah. This F03, this was to create another account just for drainage? Separate out of roads?
That's correct, yes.
Other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the revisions to Resolution F03 as a second reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. Next item on the agenda, second reading of revisions to Resolution M05. Steve?
Thanks, Doug. Motion is to approve revisions to Resolution M05. The proposed modification to Resolution M05 states that enforcement of the animal control issues and disputes rests with Worcester County. In those cases where Worcester County Animal Control is unable to take custody of an animal, Ocean Pines Police may have to act. In those cases, there should be a schedule of fees in place to account for the impoundment of the animal in question. The revision to M05 had its first reading at the January 21, 2023 board meeting. Adoption of this revision as proposed by the Bylaws Committee clarifies and addresses who has responsibility for animal control disputes and issues.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Very straightforward. Stewart?
Yeah. Now, so that I understand, if someone has their dog gets out and it's picked up by turned over to the police department, our police department. So our police department does not have jurisdiction and sends it to Worcester, or do we keep it? What happens with the animal? I just want to be clear.
I'm not quite sure how the actual procedure would take place. It might well be that if the resident contacted the police department would say, we need to contact the Worcester Animal Control and have the issue addressed. If Animal Control says they cannot do it, then the Ocean Pines Police Department might have to step in and at least temporarily hold the animal. I'm not,
don't we do that now? That where if an animal's picked up, our police department holds them and then has to contact the owner from whatever identifiers on the.
I think the first contact has to go to Worcester County Animal Control because they're the ones that have jurisdiction over it. Our police department doesn't.
Right.
The police department would step in the event that for whatever reason, animal control couldn't get there. So it would be a temporary fix.
Be held here for a period of time before they're turned over to Worcester County's Animal Control?
That's correct. And there would have to be, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's already a schedule of fees in place. But if there isn't, there needs to be one established for the payment of the fees while the animal is in the possession of the Ocean Pines Police Department.
Okay, I'll recognize John.
Thank you, Doug.
Finish, Jeff.
Several years ago, Worcester County passed an ordinance where we can issue a $100 citation on the spot. Okay, so it doesn't have to go to the county first. If we get a call for dog running at large, we see the dog running at large, we identify who the owner is, we can issue a citation right then and there. if we pick a dog up that we don't know who it belongs to, we get rid of it as soon as we can, because we don't want to have to really babysit and be responsible for.
To Worcester County.
Yes, to the county.
I'm putting them down.
Yeah, no, we call the county and they are very receptive.
Okay.
You know, so we, at most, it's maybe a couple hours that we would have it.
All right, noted.
I have a question for the officer. Do we have, a lot of these animals are chipped. We don't have the capacity.
No, we do not.
Okay,
County does.
county does? Okay.
Any questions? Any discussion? Now to call the question. All those in favor of accepting the second revisions to resolution M05, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Record the vote is unanimous. Next item is a review of resolution B02. Steve?
Thank you, Doug. The Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee requests Resolution B02, dealing with rules of order for board meetings, whether it meets current requirements and practices. The resolution itself has been overdue for review since October 2022. The committee reviewed this resolution, has not determined any specific provisions merit attention at this time.
Colette?
Discussion.
Well, it's not a motion. This is just a review of the
So-
resolution.
You know, in theory, I agree with this. However, section C1 of this states that any member who desires to address the meeting during public comments shall be recognized. This section doesn't provide for the exclusion of members who are participating virtually. Yet presently, people who are participating virtually have been told that they may not participate in public comments. So if we're going to continue that practice, this resolution, I believe, needs to be revised to codify that.
Sure. Agreed.
So I think if that's, and you're the one that established this practice. So if this is a practice that you feel that needs to be continued, I'll put it on you to go back to
Yeah,
the bylaws.
the idea would be, I will have something prepared, run by the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee, hopefully for a fast track, to put a first reading with that change in there for next month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And just for my fellow board members who, you know, maybe haven't been around as long as Colette and I, periodically, the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee has, well, they have a list of all of the bylaws and resolutions, and they have a calendar of when the last time each one of them was reviewed. Okay, so, and I was mentioning this to Steve, these are just reviews to say, hey, you know what? There's not been a recommendation from the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee to make any change to this resolution, but what they want is acknowledgement that we looked at this and reviewed it, and we'll come back to them and say, yes, we reviewed it. We don't see any action required at this time. However, in this particular case, we will. All right. So again, just when we go through these reviews, there's a backstory there that, you know, will help the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee continue their work and you know, monitor what they're doing. So any other discussion on this review of B02? All right, next item on the agenda is another review of B03.
Thank you, Doug. The Bylaws and Resolutions Committee requests the board to review B03, dealing with meetings of association members. B03 has been overdue for review since October of 2020. I guess, if I get this wrong, I'm sure the more seasoned members will step in, but what occurred in the past was the prior board had this up last summer for discussion. And it's a little unclear as to exactly what formal action that board took, but there was a lot of discussion about being able to account members who were participating virtually for the purposes of a quorum. Ultimately, no action was taken. Whether it was formally tabled or not, I'm not entirely clear, but no action was taken. When the committee reviewed this again, it was their recommendation that this matter should be brought back to the board's attention not to follow off the first reading from last summer, but to initiate the conversation all over again. And so that's why we have new members on the committee, we have new members on the board. There was no defined procedure back in the summer as to how they were going to proceed. And so that was the suggestion, and so we're coming back before the board for discussion. I will note that the committee included in section 3A, double small I, if you will, that the general manager shall report to the board not less than 30 days prior to the annual meeting that the equipment or systems is available to ensure that only qualified members of Ocean Pines may be counted towards a quorum to vote and to fully participate in the meeting. I think that would go a long ways to addressing the concern that was raised in the summer, but that was the suggestion made by the committee.
Other discussion? Colette?
So we're going to consider this a first read.
No,
Changes.
You're thinking along the same lines, but I guess my question, Steve, would it be reasonable to assume that you will bring this up next month for a first reading?
I can definitely do that. But let me be real candid. There was just a uncertainty. I won't say confusion. There was this uncertainty about how this board wanted to follow on what happened last summer. And so the decision was, this is the best way to bring it back, was as a charging document.
Right.
If the board can give us some guidance as to how you want this to be considered, I think it's a significant matter to be considered. It shouldn't be ignored. We'll have to make a decision because the annual meeting's coming up. But there's enough lead time to get squared away one way or the other. So the board says this is what they want us to do. I think the committee would be agreeable to doing it.
Let me make a recommendation. I recommend to my colleagues here, let's take a look at this information that's been presented and recommended by the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee with the understanding that this will be brought up next month for a first reading. We okay with that?
Yeah. Why can't we consider it a first reading today? We all
Because we
got
cannot
it.
change the agenda once we voted on it. Okay? All right. Any other discussion on this review of this resolution? Everybody okay with starting Steve to have it come up for a first reading next month? Yep. Good. Okay. Next item, a review of B05, Steve.
Thank you, Doug. Bylaws and Resolutions Committee, that's the board review resolution B05. This resolution has been overdue for review since October 2020. B05 implements charter provisions, in particular provision which refers to the Maryland Code. The current version of the resolution has been in effect since December 2008, and it's timely to determine whether the resolution meets current code provisions and association policy regarding conflict of interest. The charter article references in authority are no longer current due to the renumbering of the articles. 2013 amendment and restatement. The current version was reviewed and signed by then Association Council. It is recommended this also reviewed by current council.
Any discussion?
Yeah.
Frank?
Just a general question. With these charging documents, is it even necessary for us to agree to them? I mean, could not the committee or the liaison submit that directly to you as the board president and you charge the committee?
Yeah, it's, we're flexible. It works either way. The charging document, the benefit of that is it documents the fact that it happened. All right. And it needed to. My recommendation on this is, given the fact that the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee is referencing the charter and some other things, my recommendation is to go back to, rather than just saying, hey, it's okay, let's go back to the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee and say, do you have any recommendations? And then have this come up for, and if they do, then have this come up for a first reading at the next meeting.
If I may, that's fine. I would remind the board that it's the recommendation of the committee that this also be reviewed by council. And therefore it might be more economical in terms of time to have council review this at the same time and maybe even let the bylaws committee know significant issues. But rather than have the committee back up as first reading and then send it over to council, maybe we can do those simultaneously.
I stand corrected. I do see where it says the resolution reviewed by council. So unless anybody has a problem, I'm going to forward this to council for review and recommendations, and we'll follow up accordingly. Everybody okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Done. It's on me.
That's 206, right?
BO5.
Year five.
All right, the next item is a review of resolution B06. Steve?
The Bylaws and Resolutions Committee requests the board to review resolution of B06 dealing with indemnification policy to determine whether it incorporates current board policy. The resolution has been long overdue for review since October 2020. It is recommended that consideration be given in having the resolution reviewed by council. The provisions in the charter now, Article 7th and resolution are based on Maryland code provisions. This resolution does not indicate a previous review by council. 06 extends indemnification of volunteers through the category. That category is not expressly identified in the charter or in the code.
Discussion? So Steve, is it the recommendation of the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee to have this one reviewed by council as well?
I think this would be similar, yes.
Very good. All right, unless anybody has any issue with that, I'll send this one to council as well.
If I may, Doug, just to point out, I think the committee would be somewhat hamstrung to bring this back up for first reading until the board or the committee has been informed by council. So
Reasonable.
We're going to wait to hear from them.
Let's set a soft target date of next month, and if it can't be met, there's nothing as time critical to our operation on this one. So with the idea that if we can't make the April meeting, we'll certainly have it picked up for May, based on response and timing from council. All right, next item on the agenda, review of convenience fee resolution. Steve Jenkins.
Yeah. The Bylaws Advisory Committee, Resolutions Advisory Committee requests the board to review a resolution. And the background is upon reviewing of governing documents posted on the OPA website under the governing documents book, financial and budgetary resolutions, there's a document listed with the convenience fee resolution dated 2/25/17 that is attached. The document is neither was never assigned a resolution number, nor does it contain the typical format of required signature. The committee does not have a record of this resolution and was not tracking it. Comment about Bylaws Committee for a number of years has had a tracking document, a governance document. The committee speculates this document may have been intended to be part of the OPA's financial management procedure manual. However, if it was the board's intention that this become a new resolution, it will need to be properly formatted, assigned a number, contain proper signatures, and be added to this committee's records. If not, it is to be a new policy, included one in the financial management. Financial manuals. And the committee just frankly does not know how the board wants us to proceed with this. So that's why it's being raised at this time.
Discussion, questions? All right, I have one. So clearly this really falls under operations. In other words, the ability to allow for, your assessment to be paid by a credit card and the associated charges, with that kind of transaction. My question, I guess, we consider is, it's one of those gray areas. Could it be a policy to say, we can and we, our members are authorized to pay their assessment via credit card? I think that's a topic worth discussing. Perhaps having it as a resolution, would be something along those lines, because again, there's a fine line between, I think you guys know my position, there's a fine line between the financial procedures manual and a financial policy manual. We have nothing to do with procedures. That's the purview of the GM. We do have the purview of the financial policy manual. And the question is this, and I don't have an answer, I don't need an answer right now, but I guess the idea would be, should this be included in the financial policy manual, or should it be handed off as a separate resolution, or I guess third, just turned over to operations, and that's how it works? I think those are the three choices that we have.
Yeah, this is a convenience resolution paid by credit card.
Well, it
I
has,
think the issue is you know, is there anything in the financial legal system that would say that we either can charge a convenience fee or not?
Mhm.
And I think that puts it in the realm of policy, not operational procedure.
Okay.
So I think we need to ascertain as to whether there are any banking or credit card regulations, legal regulations that would prohibit us from doing that. And if not, we can set that policy.
Yeah, and that's the discussion I'm proposing.
Yeah.
That we do that. So why don't we have homework to do on that one? I believe we can take that offline. It doesn't have to be done right now, but clearly that is a task for us as a board to kind of look at and say, hey, what do we want to do? What do we want to promote going forward? And then obviously we'll push that over to the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee and get their opinion. Everybody okay with that? Okay.
So if I may, just so I'm clear, the board will inform bylaws how it wants this matter to be addressed.
The ball's in our court right now.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, first reading of Resolution B09. Steve?
Thanks, Doug. This is a resolution a new resolution to establish a policy for record retention and video recording for board meetings and committee. The proposed resolution would establish a policy for Ocean Pines regarding the retention of video recordings and minutes of board meetings and committee meetings, setting time limits for the retention of each. The Bylaws and Resolutions Committee has been charged with drafting for board consideration a policy addressing retention of board and committee minutes and video recordings. Concern has been expressed regarding retaining video recordings for extended periods of time and questions regarding how long minutes should be retained as well. The committee's draft seeks to answer those matters while still preserving each committee's options regarding whether to record and whether to archive such recordings for the stated 2-month period. All open board meetings and all member meetings would be recorded and archived unless the board votes not to do so. I do want to point out that the committee also appended a question that it believes requires review by council. Specifically, the committee seeks to have council review this matter as it applies to books and records requests, as well as whether minutes need to be kept in the county repository and for what period of time, perhaps in perpetuity. I think that's a question that council needs to address. So that's where we are.
Questions, discussion? So in follow-up to Laura's request, there's an idea here of keeping it for some period of time. I think that we really do need to understand whether or not committee meetings need to have the consistent retention criteria that board meetings have. And are there any legal requirements for us to do so? I guess the idea here would be this is counting as your first reading, correct?
Yes,
I just wanted to clarify that, even though it doesn't say it on the meeting, on the motion form, this is a first reading of this motion. So let's treat it as such.
Sheet says first.
That's it. It's first reading, right?
Maybe I should put my glasses on.
First reading.
Oh, sorry. Oh, it says, I'm sorry. When the meetings go over 2 hours, I start to lose interest. Frank?
Just as a general thing, I think before they're gonna take a look at this, I have this kind of concern about video retention, and it comes from an email that I believe you sent about a potential legal action that occurred like 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. I think we need from council what we need to retain to protect the corporation for what length of time, and it ties all in with video surveillance and retention. Because, with the amount of changes that we have in our, dictated by our governing documents, okay? And our historical changeover just in personnel, that's normal for a corporation. Something that if we had to testify against something that happened 2 years and 11 months ago, I think we'd be hard pressed to defend the corporation. Could be hard pressed. That's where I want to make sure that our surveillance and video retention on everything protects us against. End of comment.
Okay. Let me answer that. And from my corporate world, one of the things that it's interesting that you're always trying to protect informational assets, for whatever reason, whether it be business continuity, things along those lines. But I found from an attorney friend of mine who works for the corporation, it was not readily apparent at first, but you know what? For every piece of information that the attorneys and the organization wants to keep, there's also information that they want to delete.
Yes.
And it's kept and protected by a retention policy, right? For those who don't have a retention policy, just think about this. An e-discovery, you could spend thousands of dollars, many, many hours, sending the staff on a wild goose chase to produce information or look for information because you didn't have a retention policy. Okay. So the retention policy, the idea of, and I've been a proponent of this for, I've told you guys, we need a retention policy. So Frank, we're in line with that. How long the retention policy should be, I think is mandated by the type of data you're collecting. I don't know. I would think that surveillance, in a regulated environment like an alcohol serving venue, right, might have some requirements that are either, county-based, state-based, federal-based, so on and so forth. We would have to pay attention to that. I'm not sure those same regulations would apply to a committee meeting.
Yeah.
All right. So I would dare say that a committee meeting probably only has to have some convenience retention versus a legal/required retention. So in looking at that, I think we need to take that into consideration. Frank or Steve.
Thanks, Doug. I just wanted to inform the committee as well that I requested from John some just basic information relating to Ocean Pine storage capacity as well as the cost. And from staff, storage in and of itself should not be an issue. All of our storage is from what we approved 2 months or 3 months ago. All of our storage will now be in the cloud. We currently pay for 7 terabytes of information, which is, to use the technical term, a great deal of space. Hey, that's what I got from staff. Anyway, it currently costs us $7,000 per year for this service. Any additional terabyte would cost another $1,250 per year. And I'm assuming that this probably would move whatever videos we decide to save off YouTube and just be kept within our own website. But that's just, again, background information consistent with what we were charged to come up with, the committee was charged to come up with.
All right, any other discussion? Stuart?
I just have a question, John. Does YouTube cost us anything?
YouTube, no.
No, okay.
Pete? I mean, it depends on what you're looking for YouTube, but right now it's not costing us anything.
Okay.
Depends on what,
I think Josh might have, but it's not negligible amount.
depends on what you're using it for.
Okay.
Right now, there's no cost.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, Colette?
Yeah, I'm reaching that 2-hour limit too. My retention.
Based on advice from colleague, I think we can shut off the comment.
Yeah, maybe we can just
Topic.
stop. So my question is, are we making a decision today about the period of time? Or are we going to defer that to council?
Let's defer to, my recommendation, let's take this to council first and see if there's any differentiation between the two. Because I have some strong feelings about how long certain things should be kept versus how long certain other things should be kept.
Okay,
Okay, we
thanks.
can discuss that before the second reading.
Okay.
Okay. All right, no more discussion on that. Thank you guys very much. Last item on the new business agenda is a motion to approve a defined pension equivalent contribution plan for the Ocean Pines Police Department. Purpose and effect, the Ocean Pines would like to be more competitive with other agencies who offer pension plans to their departments. Recommendation from a general manager is to amend the current 401k plan. The background information, current plan is a safe harbor plan with a non-elective contribution of 5%. Proposed plan would be to remove the safe harbor non-elective contribution provision, add an employer match of 100% up to 5% at a 6-year vesting schedule for new hires, make a discretionary contribution of 15% equally provided at the end of each fiscal year, and provide a profit sharing contribution with a 6-year vesting schedule. Final result would be a 25% deferral per fiscal year, which is 5% employee contribution plus 5% employer match plus 15% employer discretionary. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. And I am.
One question. Does this vesting, do the people that are already here over 5-6 years, are they already grandfathered in?
Prospective.
Huh?
Prospective. It's going forward.
Yeah,
Going forward.
Okay, so I am going to turn the floor over to John. John, you can.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Doug. Oh, yeah, Doug pretty much explained it. This will make us competitive, every other municipality and every other police department in the area. The cost for this would probably increase on the budget of $175,000 a year, to put in perspective.
Okay. Discussion, I saw Frank first.
Just a question, John, if you can answer it, who can. How does this proposed plan exactly compare with what's called LEOPS?
Yep.
And how does it exactly compare with Ocean City, which I understand has a different pension system better than LEOPS? Because, I mean, that's going to be our competitive.
Sure. No, it's an excellent question, Frank. Doug, from the board, please. Absolutely. I have been working with the individuals from the county to get a comparable. This is very comparable to LEOPS just in general. We have somebody on our staff now from another municipality who I work with. Basically, this puts us right there.
Good. Colette and then Steve.
Yeah, is this $175 in the budget?
$75,000.
$1,000 is.
It's not in the budget. I was going to come forward and ask for a transfer from, if, I don't know if you want me to do that now, but yeah. So the way, and thank you. The way I would like to pay for this is, this was not part of the budget process because we didn't know what we could or couldn't do. This took several meetings with our review with our advisors to work this out and come up with an investment vehicle. So what I would ask for is a transfer from our realized retained earnings of approximately $175,000 to cover this for the budget starting May, the budget year starting May 1st, 23-24.
Steve?
Yeah, John, if I may, the reason we have to do this is because we cannot get into LEOPS because we are not a noted municipality.
Correct.
Neither county, town, we're just, we don't fit under the definition.
That's correct. We've tried over the years, yes.
Right. And so my question, and I've asked this before, and I don't know where this is, but you and I have discussed this in the past. There are, let's be candid, very few homeowners associations the size of Ocean Pines that provide police, or even larger or smaller, that provide police coverage.
Correct.
What I'm curious about is whether or not we know how many other homeowner associations in the state of Maryland provide the same service. Because my thought would be, it is, if it's a small number, it might be possible to get a change in the statute. It'll take some time, so we still have to do this anyway. But we might be able to get a change in statute to recognize that some homeowners associations acting as a municipality in this case should be allowed to enter LEOPS. And so I'm just curious, any idea where that, we know if there's any other comparable situations?
Yeah, we have reached out to our representatives. In fact, our current team, we have, trying, but
We don't know of any other homeowners association?
our size are out there. One time I heard like one or two, I don't know. I can't answer that. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, HOAs don't,
Yeah.
sorry, HOAs don't qualify for LEOPS at the current time. I think it would probably be best to go through the legislative process to see if they could recognize HOAs.
Yeah.
For this to be included in it, to your point of the size of what Ocean Pines is, the amount of homeowners. I will say, in with this particular plan, and I've had an opportunity to talk with John regarding this, coming from the HR field. This is a very, very good plan, very, very rich plan that has been presented here. Ocean City, and I can tell you, and I reached out to their director of HR, they chose not to go into LEOPS. They chose to do something better, which is along the lines of what's being presented here. And the reason why that they decided not to go with LEOPS is the retention that they've had with their staff there. So they wanted to do something even better than what LEOPS had to offer. And this type of a plan that has been presented here is very, very good, very, very attractive for new staff that will be coming on board as far as for getting folks on board. So
A lot of work went into this.
it's very good.
Vesting here is the vesting, and I think.
Yeah, the vesting is perfect.
Yeah, just, and,
Thank you.
and, just for everybody's sake, recruitment and retention is still an issue. Being able to get police officers, being able to keep police officers, especially at the entry level. As Ocean Pines, we could have sat around and complained about it and done nothing. But, through John's work and through others, we decided that, it's in our best interest to try to stimulate some participation and get the kind of police force that we need. John, correct me if I'm wrong, we're down eight officers?
Yeah, I'll say 7.
We're down 8 officers, okay? So this board has, in coordination with John, has said, we can't continue to just sit on our hands and do that. So, driving, the need for this, like, the pension plan is not the right term, but this contribution to their retirement funding.
Pension equivalent.
Yeah, a pension equivalent is the right way. Is our, kind of answer, is our response to the notion that we do have, recruitment and retention issues and that we're down 8 officers. So we're aggressively trying to address that in order to continue to make Ocean Pines one of the safest, in the state. Frank, you were next.
So would you accept an amendment to change the wording to and approve the transfer of the $175,000 required to initiate the program?
I will accept a friendly amendment to that.
From the realized retained earnings.
From the retained earnings from last year.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, so there's a motion to amend this motion with the wording Frank said, to funding to be provided from the retained earnings from the previous year. Is there a second?
Discussion.
Discussion.
This is exactly the reason that I was not happy with the way the budget discussion went last month. The priority that we need to have is public safety. This is a $20 per property owner cost that we're approving, which I'm totally in support of. This is much more important than discussions of using our retained earnings to lower fees, lower assessments. We need to prioritize public safety when it comes to how we use retained earnings. And last month and in the budget discussions, there was considerable discussion about, can't we just use retained earnings? And, that's not the smart thing to do when we know that we have public safety challenges that we face. This was one of them we were aware of. The other one that we're aware of is the new firehouse at the South Station. We don't yet know what the members are going to be asked to contribute to that. So we need to be stingy with our retained earnings, in my opinion.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make, I agree with what Rick was saying regarding LEOPS and all that. I do think there's an advantage if we can find a way to get it done. There may only be 1 or 2 other homeowners associations in other parts of the state that may face the same situation, and a small fix in the state's Maryland statutes would allow us to get in underneath that. Maybe giving the flexibility to enhance the plan if we felt it was appropriate. This is not a question of us trying not to pay. It's just a more stable situation is what I was suggesting. But I agree with you. That's the fix that has to be made.
Yeah. All right. The motion on the floor is to accept the amendment to the original motion of providing the funding sources. Since no more discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment, the original motion of using the retained earnings as a funding source for this, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, please record the vote as unanimous. Let's move back to the original motion. Motion on the floor to now accept the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the motion as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The vote is unanimous. Next item on the agenda, appointments. I'll entertain a motion to accept all these appointments as presented.
Move.
There's second?
Second. Oh, I actually have, we have the discussion in a minute.
I'm asking if we want to accept all these promotions as a package. No?
No.
All right, well then I'll just one at a time. All right, first item, first individual is Patricia Benner, second term Environmental and Natural Assets Committee. I'll entertain a motion to accept that appointment. Second? Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the appointment of Patricia Benner, second term Environmental and Natural Assets Committee, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Board unanimous. Next item is Sherry Clifford, first term chair and search committee. I'll entertain a motion to accept that appointment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I have an objection to this applicant.
Okay, discussion.
The discussion. I have an objection to this applicant for the search committee. I am the liaison. Sherry Clifford is the applicant. I've been endorsing this candidate that openly endorses boycotting our food establishments. Her name appears on a petition. How can you be on a committee to work to better our town when you openly endorse hurting our town? It just doesn't make sense to me. To coin a phrase from Director Horn used during a Board of Directors meeting March 23rd of 2022 in a similar scenario, I do not endorse this candidate as having the skills and attitude necessary to inspire confidence.
Any discussion?
I'm going to just offer that this applicant successfully served on the search committee last year and participated in the process that yielded a sufficient number of candidates and successfully carried out the functions of the job, which are essentially clerical jobs. Moreover, during her time as association member, as she stated on her own behalf this morning, she has done a lot of work to better this community. And to quote our chair, we do not turn away volunteers.
Okay. I could have said the same thing last year. I'm sorry.
All right, wait. Need to be recognized by the chair.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would just take issue with the issue of whether or not she signed a petition to boycott our amenities. My overall view is, for whatever reason, boycotts are an acceptable form of social protest, as long as they're nonviolent. I mean, I made a distinction between threats and intimidation and acts of violence versus just a boycott. This committee has nothing to do with the amenities. And we've always been seeking volunteers to serve on our various committees. Regardless of whether or not you agree with the boycott itself or whether it's effective or any other consideration, this committee has nothing to do with that. I don't see, I mean, I appreciate what Stuart's saying, but I just think it's misplaced. And so I would suggest that we should proceed. As to whatever happened in past history, I wasn't here at the time. I certainly wouldn't have supported anything along those lines, but that's neither here nor there.
Monica.
I disagree in that I have an issue with all the negativity, referencing our sitting president as a king with a Burger King hat displayed. It just doesn't give me the confidence that it would be in the best interest when, you know, we have to work so closely together. So.
Discussion. Frank?
Yeah, I guess so. First, a disclaimer. I don't belong to any of these Facebook groups. Okay. So, and I'm kind of opposed, or I should say, I really do have a litmus test. Okay. And the litmus test that I have, there's a litmus test it's a 3-part test. It's number 1, has the person either served successfully in the past or are they willing to serve? Because for everything, be it board, committee, we want volunteers, not hostages. Okay. The second thing is, do they have the skill levels and requisite skill levels involved? I mean, and I'll use the case of the past rather than the past that was non-controversial rather than any controversial past. In the past, we had for strategic planning, somebody that was a corporate head of strategic planning for a major corporation. Okay, whether that person politically agrees with me or not, okay, whether they belong to a group or not outside of this association, there is no question about their skills in strategic planning. So they passed that litmus test. And the third litmus test is, in fact, is there something there? And I'm gonna confess, all 7 of us will say it's not political. And I'd say all 7 of us are BSing the people when they say it's not political. If you belong to one group and you come from another group, you're not going to get a vote. It's how it is. I'm sorry to throw the flag on all 7 of us, but You know, you only have to be here for about 3 weeks to figure out that's how it really works. Okay, so in this case, this individual passes 2 or 3 tests that I have. And actually all 3 because I'm not a member of either group. So I understand the objection. I understand the reality of the politics. I understand the objection because they're have opposite views of one of the other groups. But there is no legitimate reason why they can't serve on this committee.
Other discussion?
All I have to say is words have consequences. If you say things, you sign things, they have consequences. I can't get behind a candidate that actively tries to denigrate our amenities when we're trying to build them. We're kind of like cheerleaders here for our town.
Other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the appointment of Sherry Clifford, first term chair and search committee, say aye.
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 Opposed? Aye.
Aye.
All right, record any abstentions? Seeing none, vote is 3 yea, 4 nay. Next item is Angela Hunter, first term racket sports committee. I'll entertain a motion to accept that appointment.
So moved.
Your second
Second.
discussion?
Just want to make a comment that the Racket Sports Advisory Committee's goal is to have members knowledgeable about and involved in playing each of the 3 major sports. And they are looking for a balance in that participation. Angela Hunter is, until it's a tennis player, knows about that sport. And her membership on this committee will bring her knowledge of that sport and its needs to balance the membership of that committee. So I fully endorse this.
Yeah. Other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the appointment of Angela Hunter, first term racket sports committee, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote as unanimous. Next appointment, Helen Johnson, second term strategic plan committee. I'll entertain a motion to accept that appointment.
So moved.
Your second
Second.
discussion?
I'll just say, as former liaison to the Strategic Planning Committee, this member brought a lot of work and wisdom both to that committee. I really endorse her continuation, and I'm grateful that she is willing to continue.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment too. Helen Johnson, I've met her and chat with her quite a bit. She's well respected and would absolutely be an asset to the strategic planning committee. Stuart.
Yeah, I sit as the liaison to the strategic planning committee, and I can't say enough good things about this lady.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the appointment of Helen Johnson, second term strategic planning committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote unanimous. Next item, Gary Miller, chair of the aquatics committee. I'll entertain a motion to accept that appointment.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Just real quick, the current chair, I was told the current chair of the aquatics committee stepped down because they have other commitments that are taking up a lot of their time. And the committee has endorsed Gary to be their new chairperson. So I certainly feel by that. Any other discussion?
I briefly served on the committee with Gary, and he's put forth a lot of effort, a lot of discussion, brings a lot of good ideas to the table.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Any other discussion, Frank?
I'm the liaison. He has full support of the committee and full support of myself.
Good. Noted. All right. Seeing no further discussion, I'll entertain all those in favor of Gary Miller, appointed chair of the aquatics committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Recorded as unanimous. Next item is Susan Morris, second term golf committee. I'll entertain a motion to appoint her.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of Susan Morris being appointed second term golf committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record the vote is unanimous. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Adjourned. Thank you, everyone.